Think you know everything about New Orleans? Think again. Under the cobblestones, behind the polished plaques and glossy postcards, lies a past that historians whispered about and power tried to erase. Tonight, we pull the curtain back. We trace faded ink across brittle paper. We follow the fingerprints of scandal that time could not fully remove. This is not idle gossip. These are stories that once toppled reputations, reshaped neighborhoods, and changed the course of a city, stories so scandalous they were deliberately buried. Are you ready to look? New Orleans loves its image. The French Quarter hums with jazz and late-night cafes. The Mississippi winds past levees and memory. Jackson Square freezes tourists in place while the city turns in ways the guidebooks rarely describe. But every city has alleys, literal and figurative, where the light does not reach. Behind locked doors and iron cabinets in municipal archives sit files with names crossed out, photographs half-burned, ledgers with numbers that do not add up. These objects whisper. They hint at a second city, the one the brochures never mention. Imagine a ledger from a long-ago year, column after column of sums that vanish beneath hurried scribbles. Imagine a diary, its edges browned, where a socialite writes about a midnight visitor she was not meant to record. Together they begin to sketch a map of hidden transactions and hushed encounters. In the pages of such boxes are three stories, different in shape, but linked by the same impulse to conceal, a forbidden affair that upended a dynasty, the quiet machinery of systemic corruption, and a cover-up so deliberate it rewrote the margins of history. Follow these whispers from ink to aftermath, and from rumor to the modern streets where echoes still linger. The first box is small, unremarkable, marked with a year and a hand that hoped it would be forgotten. Inside, letters sealed with wax, a matchbook from a riverside hotel, and a torn photograph of three people at a summer party. On the surface, the season is ordinary. Beneath it, a liaison blooms between one of the city's most respected households and someone who, by all accounts, should have remained invisible. It begins with a letter, ordinary in its paper but coded in its language. Hidden messages tucked into polite phrases. A writer who signs with a flourish meant for someone else. Someone kept the envelope. Someone kept the proof. When a judge's name appears on a leaked page, reactions are swift, columns are shifted in print, an editor vanishes, a family prepares a public ritual of contrition. Donations are made to hospitals, a wing opens at a museum, favors are exchanged that translate into silence. Reputation is currency. The cost of losing it is measured in ruined careers and distant transfers. Yet shadows have memory. A lover's handwriting survives, a maid's folded testimony becomes a key. Decades later, descendants inherit not the truth but the work of forgetting. Streets are named in subtle homage to the cover-up. Plaques praise charitable gestures whose funds once replaced the voices they concealed. The scandal recedes into rumor, but traces remain for those who look. A portrait hung a little too prominently, a whispered family legend, a gap in a genealogy that refuses easy explanation. The second story lives in ledgers and memos stamped with civic authority. Public contracts are signed in daylight, payments are funneled in the night. Bridges certified safe were patched with shortcuts. Roads praised for their engineering hide cheaper materials and hurried workmanship. A public works director who leaves office as a celebrated hero appears, under scrutiny, as the linchpin of a network of bribes and favors. Those papers sketch a system designed to hide, shell companies, relabeled invoices, petitions lost in the shuffle. Read the city map differently and it becomes an anatomy of favors. A warehouse that once stored civic equipment becomes the quiet center where receipts are shredded and names erased. A park is paved not because it was needed, but because a contractor's account required balancing. What is stolen here is not only money but trust. When infrastructure is bought instead of built, neighborhoods pay in safety and opportunity. When the press sits too close to insiders, investigations are trimmed before they begin. Yet the seams show. Small inconsistencies, a misfiled check, a date that doesn't match, are the threads that tug at a fabric of deceit. A clerk grows disgruntled. A secretary keeps a copy of a memo. A whistleblower, at great personal cost, slips a note to someone who still believes printed lines can change things. The pattern unravels, not all at once, but through patient accumulation, names repeated across ledgers, a contractor appearing in files from unrelated departments. When those names are traced, the web reveals more than a few bad actors. It reveals a system that awarded loyalty over safety, connections over competence. The third bundle is the heaviest. It carries no official stamp because it was smuggled out under cover of night, a bundle of charred documents, smudged witness statements, and notes that smell faintly of smoke. Here lies what the city tried hardest to forget, a moral panic, a conflagration of accusations, and a coordinated effort to remove all traces. At the center of this story is a night the official timeline barely records, but which surviving witnesses recall as the moment the city's moral compass split. In the immediate aftermath, accusations were leveled at a group of outsiders. Trials were held in public while crucial evidence vanished in private. Transcripts were altered. Witnesses were paid, intimidated, or quietly moved away. Files show payments into relocation funds and letters instructing an archivist to remove sensitive items. When the flames of scandal were finally doused, the city rewrote itself. Monuments were rededicated. New histories appeared in schoolbooks. The people who were directly affected, their names and their stories, were rarely mentioned again. Yet trauma leaves marks. An alley displays a scorch pattern that repair crews covered with a cheerful plaque. A small neighborhood has fewer descendants than its size suggests. An old saying circulates in hushed tones among the oldest residents, a phrase no one wants to explain to outsiders. Taken together, these whispers recast New Orleans as something other than a tidy catalog of civic virtue. What emerges is a portrait of human complexity, desire and shame, ambition and fear, the hunger for influence and the instinct to hide what is inconvenient. These stories are neither about villains alone nor saints alone. They are about ordinary people making extraordinary choices, about institutions that rewarded concealment, and about generations who paid the price for a city's polished image. Uncovering these histories is not merely sensational. It forces a reckoning. Who paid for prestige with their voices? Who benefited when truth was rearranged into comfort? Silence has consequences. Missing witnesses shaped policy. Missing evidence shaped trust. That history, bowed and incomplete, still holds power over the present, over zoning decisions, school curricula, and the names on our streets. Look closely and you will see the trace of what was hidden. A commemorative plaque may celebrate a donation whose origin no one questions. A grand building may stand on land whose acquisition was arranged through threats and quiet persuasion. A popular festival may mark a triumph that, beneath the surface, was paid for by concessions made in the name of propriety. These are not conspiracies born of imagination but patterns visible to those who read the margins, donations timed to silence, infrastructure projects timed to benefit the connected, histories printed to favor the comfortable. As you walk the French Quarter or cross a bridge by the river, notice how the city speaks in half sentences. Listen for the stories that end too quickly. Ask why certain names reappear in foundations and street signs while others never do. The question is never whether scandal exists. Scandal, in one form or another, exists wherever people gather and power concentrates, but whether we will allow history to be honest. If even one voice that was once buried finds daylight because of this telling, then the excavation will have been worth it. The truest measure of a city's greatness is not how well it polishes its image, but how bravely it confronts what it tried to hide. Hidden stories deserve light. Forgotten names deserve to be spoken. The past is not a closed case, it is a living presence that shapes who we are and who we might become. This is the real story of New Orleans, messy, raw, and buried, but not forgotten. Keep asking. Keep looking. Never accept a single story as the only story.